Hey everyone, welcome back to Age and Education channel. Today we shall continue with the chapter Respiratory System. So in the first part we have looked into some basics of respiration, right? Now we shall get into human respiratory system. So what did we see as part of this human respiratory system? We have just looked into some parts, right? Like the nostrils, nasal passage, then pharynx, larynx, trachea, after that lungs, bronchus or bronchi, and then bronchioles, rib cage, diaphragm, alveoli. We have just mentioned the names. Now we shall look into the details of all these parts, right? So first the human respiratory system starts with nostrils. What are these nostrils? Nostrils are the narrow openings that you can find on the nose, in the nose, right? So nostrils are the narrow openings. Okay, from this nostrils we get the air to be passed into the body. So once the air passes through the nostrils into the body, then our body will have to take some steps so that all the pollution, the dust, germs, not all of it at least, but at least some of it should be filtered out, right? So for this our body is equipped with hair in the nostrils and mucus. What it does, it filters out the dust particles, right? Filters out dust particles. Fine. Now the air has entered into the nostrils, and this nostrils will be connected into nasal cavities, right? As such, we can find all this hair, mucus, everything in the nasal cavity itself. Okay, so this nostrils and nasal cavities are considered to be one part, like one set, right? Nostrils are just the openings of the nasal cavities, and the air enters through the nostrils, and in the nasal cavities we will have hair, mucus, the mechanisms that will filter out the dust particles and germs, right? So I hope you know how the hair does, right? But how about mucus? Mucus as such is sticky, and because of the sticky nature it will filter the dust particles and germs. Okay, then air enters pharynx. Where is the pharynx? Here, right? So from the nasal cavity the air enters the pharynx, and this pharynx will be at the back of the mouth, and it is a common passage for both food and air, right? So the food that enters through the oral cavity and the air that enters from the nasal cavity both get mixed up in the pharynx, right? That is the common area for food and air to pass, right? Now what happens after that? The air passes through the larynx. What is it? Larynx. What is larynx? Larynx is popularly called as voice box, right? You all could have heard about it already. Larynx is called as voice box. And now as pharynx holds both of these, food and air, there should be some mechanism to protect the larynx from the food that is there in the pharynx, right? So some accidentally some food may enter, and so there should be some protection mechanism for larynx, right? So it is in the form of epiglottis. What is it? Epiglottis. It is a structure, a flap like structure that actually doesn't allow the food to be passed into voice box or larynx, right? Only air enters the voice box or larynx. Now we are done till here. Then the air should get into trachea, right? Alright, then the air enters trachea. Trachea is also called as what? It is also called as windpipe, right? And this windpipe is further divided into bronchi, bronchioles and everything. But first of all, the trachea is surrounded by or is protected by C-shaped cartilaginous wings. What is it? Cartilaginous Vaginous rings, right? So these rings protect the trachea from collapsing, right? These rings, what does they do? The C-shaped rings protect the trachea from collapsing, right? So now we are coming almost nearer to the lungs, right? So after that, the trachea will further get divided into bronchus or bronchi. Bronchus is the singular form and bronchi is the plural form. As such, why are we using singular and plural thing? It is because the trachea will get divided into left bronchus and right bronchus, right? What is it? Left bronchus and right bronchus. Here see, trachea, here it is getting divided into right bronchus and left bronchus. Here these ribs are coming in between, but it will be divided like this, right? And then these will enter the lungs, right? So the air from trachea will enter into the bronchi and later on this bronchi will enter the lungs, right? This lungs, trachea, everything you can find these in chest cavity. What is this? This area, this entire area is called as chest cavity, or it is also called as chest cavity, or it is also called as thoracic cavity. What is it? Thoracic cavity. We call it as thoracic, but it is while you are writing you have to add an extra R. Don't forget it. Okay. So it is called as this cavity which holds all these things is called as thoracic cavity, right? Then the air enters the lungs and here the bronchi are further divided into bronchioles. What is it? They are further divided into bronchioles. Okay, and after that these are further divided into alveoli or air sac. As such, we can say that the air from bronchioles enters the alveoli or air sac. Okay, so here what happens? Here these structures will have a thin layer. What is it? Thin layer. And because of this thin layer, the exchange of gases takes place here, right? Exchange of gases takes place here. Okay, we will get into details of how alveoli works. First of all, we shall see what about this lungs. Lungs, you have two lungs, right? Left lung and right lung. And these lungs are, as you know, are the so important part of the respiratory system, right? And also, if you want to go into the properties of the lungs, I'll explain this to you in the next slide because it's too clumsy here. So about lungs, we all know that lungs are two in number, right? That is, they are a pair of respiratory organs, and these pair will be onto the either side of the heart, right? It means that heart will be in between the lungs, right? And we have two lungs as we have mentioned. We can say that the left lung is smaller than the right lung, and left lung is two-lobed and right lung is three-lobed, right? So it is what? Two-lobed, and this is three-lobed structure. And lungs is also a spongy bag-like structure. So when I am saying spongy bag-like structure, aren't you feeling like then how is this protected from any impact from the outside, right? So it cannot protect itself if it is so soft. So for this, as amazing our nature is, it has provided some mechanism that will protect our lungs. So the ribs are used to protect the lungs, right? Ribs are for the protection of lungs. Okay, so in this chest cavity we can find the lungs which are protected in the rib cage. Okay, now and beneath the lungs, right? We are done with the lungs, and now if we get into the underside of the lungs, you can find a dome shaped muscular sheet. What is this? Dome shaped muscular sheet. It is also called as diaphragm, right? Dome shaped muscular sheet called as diaphragm, called diaphragm. Okay, this will also aid in the respiration process. We will look into the details of all these, but first of all we shall see at the minute level as how the exchange of gases takes place, like how the bloodstream will receive the oxygen and will expel the carbon dioxide, right? So if we get into alveoli, we have stopped near alveoli, right? So the air enters the alveoli as we have mentioned, right? So when the air enters, this alveoli has a rich structure of blood capillaries here, right? It means that the blood will be flowing here, and as the as the layer of alveoli is very thin, then the exchange of gases takes place here. It means that oxygen is sent into the blood capillaries, right? Oxygen O2 is sent into the blood capillaries, and the carbon dioxide enters into alveoli through from the blood capillaries enters the alveoli, right? So this type of, in this manner the exchange of gases takes place. Okay, fine. Now this is about the alveoli and exchange of gases. Okay, now we shall look into the mechanism of breathing. What is the mechanism of breathing? You all know that breathing has two parts. What I am speaking about, external respiration, right? Don't forget, breathing means external respiration. There are two types of respiration, right? Two steps as such, two processes of respiration. External respiration and internal respiration. External respiration means breathing and internal respiration means cellular respiration, right? If you if you're getting confused, go back and look at the first video. You will get everything again. You can recall the things, right? So how about the breathing here? The breathing has inhalation and exhalation, right? Exhale, inhale, we keep saying that, right? So what happens here? There should be something, right? How can the lungs be filled with the air, and how can the air be gushed out of the nose? There will be some mechanism to do all this. We should know about that mechanism too, right? So we will look into the mechanism of breathing, right? All right, mechanism of breathing. And for this mechanism of breathing, what we have to understand is that, as I have already mentioned, for this the rib cage, diaphragm, and also intercostal muscles. What are those? Intercostal muscles will play an important role. Okay, so we will look how these act together to let this breathing happen, right? So for inhalation, what is it? For inhalation we shall see, right? So inhalation, as you know, it means breathing the air in. At this time what happens is that ribs move up and outward, move up and outward. You can see here, right? Air is drawn in, ribs will move out and up, okay? And diaphragm moves down. What is it? Diaphragm moves down. With this, what happens? With this, you can see an increase in the lung space, right? So there will be some increase in the lung space. This will lead to increase in the volume of chest cavity, right? So what happens when there is increase in the volume? Then immediate inhaled air gushes into the lungs, right? So air gushes into the lungs or comes into the lungs, right? Gushes into lungs. Then how about this intercostal muscles? These intercostal muscles have some divisions, like external intercostal muscles, internal intercostal muscles, and innermost intercostal muscles, right? So these intercostal muscles, here in the inhalation, the external intercostal muscles will play a role, right? These muscles will as such help the ribs in moving up and outward, right? So these internal costal muscles, the external intercostal muscles will help the ribs to move up, right? Okay. Now we are done with inhalation. In inhalation, what we have mentioned, the ribs will move up and outward, and for this the external intercostal muscles will help, and diaphragm moves down. Because of that, the volume of this chest cavity or thoracic cavity increases, and so the air gushes up into the lungs, right? Now how about exhalation? When we have to exhale, what happens? Here what happens is that everything quite opposite of inhalation happens, right? So we will make some space here. So in exhalation, ribs move down, right? Ribs move down and inwards, right? Quite opposite to that. And diaphragm also will move into the former position. It means as they have moved down, as the diaphragm has moved down, now it will move up, right? Diaphragm moves up into its former position, and the internal costal muscles will help internal intercostal muscles, right? I don't have space here. Internal intercostal muscles will help the ribs move down and inward, right? And this because of this, the volume of the thoracic cavity reduces, and so the air is forced out, right? So in this manner, in inhalation, air is forced into the lungs, and in exhalation, the air is forced out of the lungs, right? And you can even see the change in the shape, right? Here it is like this, right? So diaphragm moves down and diaphragms move back up. Okay, so inhalation, exhalation, and I have also mentioned that there are other type of muscles like intercostal muscles. There is a third type. What is the third type that was mentioned earlier? It is called innermost intercostal muscles, and those muscles as such will help in the overall process of respiration, right? So the important things that you have to understand is how the ribs are moved and what sort of muscles will help this movement of ribs, and then how the diaphragm moves in the inhalation process, and in the exhalation process what happens again, right? Now when I'm saying inhalation and exhalation, you all know that it is a common familiar perception that when we inhale, we are inhaling oxygen, and when we exhale, we are exhaling carbon dioxide, right? So you keep thinking like, okay, so we take oxygen and we give out carbon dioxide, but air as such doesn't have only oxygen, right? Air outside has many components. In fact, oxygen is only the second highest component of the air, right? First is nitrogen, then comes oxygen. So when you are taking the air, it means you are taking the air as a whole and not only oxygen, right? So here, as we are interested only in oxygen and carbon dioxide, we shall look into the percentage of oxygen and carbon dioxide that enters our body through inhalation and that exits our body through exhalation, right? So in inhalation, oxygen percentage is 21%, right? This is important. You have to remember this. Inhalation, oxygen is 20% and carbon dioxide is 0.04%. This is less because the amount of carbon dioxide in the air is also less as a component of the air, right? So when we inhale, the oxygen is 21% and carbon dioxide is 0.04%. But after exhalation, what happens? The amount of oxygen that you are giving out is 16.4%, and amount of carbon dioxide you are giving out is 4.4%. So you can see an increase here, right, from 0.04% to 4.4%. So this is about the inhalation and exhalation and the varied like the composition of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the air that you give out and the air you draw in, right? So this is about the human respiratory system, and on an average the breathing rate of a person is 15 to 20 per minute, right? 15 to 20 per minute. And kids and the just born infants will have a greater breathing rate, right? When you like check the breathing rate of infants, you will be like, what is this, why is it so fast? It will be around 50 to 60 times a minute for a newborn baby, right? And as they grow older, this rate will be falling down, and later it will settle to 15 to 20 times per minute. Okay, now it's like we are almost done with this one too. I think in the next chapter we shall look into a bit more into like cellular respiration and about the way you take care of the lungs and everything. Okay, because it's already like 22 minutes and I don't want to continue this further. Okay, now if you feel this video to be useful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Okay, thank you. Bye.